Hey, David Breslow back here with you, and today's golf tip, I want to talk about something so many golfers call me and want to know more about and get better at, and that's being in the zone. Now, I have a rather interesting take on being in the zone. You know, it's interesting when most golfers call me and I ask them, hey, what are you looking for in your game? And many times they will say, you know what, I'd like to be in the zone more often. And I'll say, hey, that's great. My next question will be, how long have you been looking to be in the zone? And quite often golfers will say, you know, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, depending on how long they've been playing the game. And then my next question is, well, how many times have you achieved that zony place, is how I call it. How many times have you actually been in the zone during those years that you've been trying to get there? And many times the answer will be a very low number. Once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times in 10 years or 15 years. And then my response is going to be this. Well, sounds like it's not a very good goal. Why would you try to reach a goal that you really only have attained twice in 10 years? That to me sounds like not a very good goal. And that's what I'm going to suggest to you here today as part of today's golf tip. If your goal is to be in the zone, my suggestion is kind of discard that as quick as you can. Because here's the thing about the zone. The zone that most people talk about is that ultimate performance place. We all love to be there. Many of us have actually been there more than once. It's an amazing place to be. We love it. I'm not saying not to want to be there. Everybody wants to be there. Why not? It's fabulous. It's an unbelievable place to be in. But here's the deal. If you try to be in the zone will move further and further away from you. Have you ever noticed that? The more you try to be in the zone, the further away it gets from you. Interesting, isn't it? So if your goal is to be in the zone, I'm suggesting to drop that goal because it's probably not the best idea. That zony place that most people talk about shows up on its own timetable, and it leaves on its own timetable. Many professional athletes who have been in that zony place, they understand exactly what I'm talking about. They don't try to make that zone appear. And so if you're trying to make that zone appear, please stop, save yourself the trouble, save yourself the frustration. Here's really what you want to try to do, is make your baseline higher. So let's say you're at this baseline right now. And then when you reach that peak zone place, maybe it's way up here, and that's great. But what happens when that zony place leaves? Because you know it will. It leaves on its own timetable. It shows up on its timetable. It's going to leave that way. And when it does, guess what? You come back down here, don't you? And then when golfers do that, they get very disappointed and very frustrated, and they kind of scratch their head and go, man, why can't I stay in that zony place? That was so great. I love being there. Well, the idea is to bring your baseline higher. So this becomes the place that you live in all the time, the place that you play the game from all the time. You bring that up from here to here. Then when that ultimate zone shows up, that peak zone everybody talks about, then you move up a little bit. It's a little higher and it feels great, but you know that's going to leave, right? So you come back down. But where do you come to? You come to this higher baseline. And that's where you want to live. And how do you do that? Everything I've been talking about in this training video series is designed to help you do that. You raise that baseline by new awarenesses, by making new choices, by practicing the breathing exercises we've talked about, by understanding some of the insights that I've been talking about throughout this video training tip series. All of that is designed to raise your baseline. Okay? Then when that zony place shows up, that's like gravy. Icing on the cake. Run with it. It's fabulous. But the idea of trying to get in that zone, please really understand this. It's just one of those things that the more you try to get to it, the further away from you it goes. And it's very frustrating if that's what you're doing. It's just what happens when you try to reach that zone place. It's not a place that you can consciously get to. You don't consciously get to. I remember back in the, I don't know if it was the mid-90s, somewhere in there, Michael Jordan on the Bulls was having this zony kind of night against, I think it was Seattle in the playoffs. And everything he threw up was going in. Everything he threw towards the basket seemed to be going in. And he was so amazed by it himself that after a shot that he threw up from a pretty long distance out, he backpedaled to go play defense, and what he ended up doing was looking at the scoring table going like this, like, hey, I don't know what's happening. They don't know what's happening. They just run with it. But players like that, professional athletes, have raised their baseline to be higher than other people's. So when that zony place shows up, they run with it, but they also know it's going to end. Nobody lives in that place all the time. Nobody stays in that place all the time. Like I said, shows up when it wants to, leaves when it wants to. Why would you want to put yourself in a very frustrating position to try to force that to happen? You can't. It's the same thing that happens when you're playing really well on a particular round and all of a sudden you recognize that you're playing well, and what happens to your game? It starts to go downhill, doesn't it? Same thing with the zone. And if you're in the zone and you start to notice you're in the zone, same thing happens. You move out of the zone. Because that conscious awareness puts your mind back into play, and that zony place has nothing to do with the mind. The mind's not functioning the same way as it usually does. So stop trying to get in the zone. First, raise your baseline. Get your baseline higher so you move from here to here as a more common daily experience on the golf course. Then when that zony place shows up, great, fantastic. Run with it, ride it, icing on the cake, stay with it for as long as it stays. But then when you come out, where are you? Boom, you're in a much higher place. Doesn't that sound like a better place to be? So think about that and consider doing the exercises, doing the things that will raise your bar. Dave Breslow, glad to be with you as usual. Please leave a note. I'd love to hear your feedback, get into a cyber conversation with you, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.